In episode 01, we discovered that money is not what we think it is. It's not gold. It's not paper. It's belief. In episode 02, we watched governments take control of that belief and slowly lose control of stability. Now we arrive at the moment when the system broke. When the question everyone had been too busy to ask suddenly became impossible to ignore. Who actually controls money? Not in theory, in reality. Because when crisis hits, money behaves very differently depending on who holds the power to create it. The question people rarely ask. When a crisis erupts, people ask many things. Why did markets crash? Why did banks fail? Why did governments intervene? Journalists ask these questions. Pundits debate them. Experts explain them. But almost no one asks the most important question. Who actually controls money? Not in theory. In reality. Because money behaves very differently depending on who holds the power to create it. The illusion most people live with. Most citizens believe money works like this. Governments create money. People earn it. Banks just move it around. This story feels intuitive. It matches what we learned in school. It confirms what we want to believe. It is also completely wrong. In modern economies, governments do not create most money. Central banks do not either. The majority of money is created somewhere else. Quietly. Digitally. Inside commercial banks. How money is really created. Here's something most people never learn. When a bank issues a loan, it does not lend existing money. It creates new money. A number appears in an account. No deposit is required beforehand. No saver loses their money. The bank's balance sheet simply expands. This is not a loophole. This is not a conspiracy. This is the system. Over 90% of money in modern economies exists because banks created credit. Money, therefore, is not printed. It is typed. Why this matters? This means money enters the economy not through democratic processes but through lending decisions. Who gets access to credit matters more than interest rates. More than inflation targets. More than any policy speech you'll ever hear. Because those who receive money first benefit the most. This is known as the Cantillon effect, named after an 18th century economist who noticed that new money doesn't enter everyone's pocket at the same time. It enters at specific points. And those close to the entry points get the benefit before prices adjust. Asset holders benefit early. Wage earners feel it late, as prices rise. As their savings lose value. As their purchasing power quietly erodes. This is not injustice by intent. It is inequality by design. The silent hierarchy of money. Watch what happens in every crisis. The same pattern appears every time. Financial institutions are rescued first. Liquidity flows upward. Stability is restored at the top. Only later, much later, does money trickle into the real economy. If it trickles at all. This creates a deep psychological fracture in society. People do not oppose rescue. They oppose asymmetry. They sense that money protects the system, not society. And once people feel that, something shifts inside them. Central banks. Powerful but constrained. Central banks are often seen as all-powerful. Gods of the financial universe. In truth, they operate under impossible mandates. They must prevent collapse, control inflation, stabilize markets, remain politically neutral, all at once. all the time. They do not choose crises. They respond to them. But here's the problem. Every response reshapes power. When central banks expand their balance sheets, they stabilize finance, but they also inflate assets. Stocks rise. Real estate rises. Bond prices rise. But wages? Not so much. This trade-off is structural, not ideological. It's built into the system itself. 2008. The moment the public noticed. Before 2008, monetary power was invisible. It happened behind closed doors. In boardrooms. In policy meetings no one watched. After 2008, it was undeniable. Trillions of dollars were created in days. Not years. Days. Institutions that had made terrible bets were rescued. Markets were restored. Bonuses were paid. But households? Households felt abandoned. They watched their homes lose value. They watched their jobs disappear. They watched their governments find unlimited money for banks, but nothing for them. The system survived. Trust did not. For the first time in generations, ordinary people realized money can be created instantly. But only for some. This realization was seismic. The birth of monetary doubt. Once this idea enters the public mind, it never leaves. People start asking questions that didn't occur to them before. Why must we work for money that can be created freely? Why are losses socialized while gains remain private? Why is discipline applied downward, to households, to workers, to borrowers, but flexibility applied upward, to banks, to institutions, to the connected? These are not economic questions. They are legitimacy questions. And legitimacy is the foundation of money. Control without conspiracy. I need to be precise here. There is no secret group controlling money. There is no hidden council meeting in a Swiss bunker. There is no shadowy cabal pulling strings. What exists instead is a system of incentives built over decades. Banks create money because economies demand credit. Governments rely on banks because growth depends on lending. Central banks support banks because collapse is unacceptable. No one designed this system in a room. The system designed itself. And then trapped everyone inside it. When control becomes concentration. Over time, financial systems consolidated. Larger banks became indispensable. Too big to fail. Too interconnected to punish. Control did not belong to individuals, but to structures. And structures resist change. Especially when stability depends on them. If you rescue an institution once, it expects rescue again. If you guarantee deposits, risk-taking increases. If you backstop markets, discipline disappears. This is not a bug. It's a feature of the design. Why this creates permanent crisis risk? If money creation concentrates in financial institutions, then crises will originate there. And when crises originate there, rescues must return there. This creates a feedback loop. Risk concentrates. Rescue concentrates. Power concentrates. And society absorbs the cost indirectly, through inflation, through stagnation, through debt that never seems to go away. This is not corruption. It is accumulation. Slow, quiet, inevitable. The emotional breaking point. For years, people tolerated complexity. They trusted the experts. They assumed someone knew what they were doing. But after 2008, tolerance collapsed. Not because people suddenly understood balance sheets, Not because they could explain derivatives or credit default swaps, but because they understood fairness. They sensed something fundamental. The rules were not the same for everyone. And when money feels unfair, its legitimacy erodes. Slowly, silently, dangerously. The moment alternatives become thinkable. Historically, people do not seek alternative money when inflation is low. They seek it when trust is low. When money no longer represents effort fairly. When savings feel unsafe. When the future feels uncertain. This is the environment in which alternative monetary ideas emerge. Not because people hate the system, but because they fear it. And this is where Bitcoin enters history. Bitcoin did not appear because technology suddenly advanced. The technology had existed for years. Cryptography had existed for decades. Bitcoin appeared because belief cracked. Because for the first time in modern history, millions of people questioned monetary authority itself. Not violently. Not politically. Not even consciously, for many of them, but conceptually. They asked questions that sounded absurd just a few years earlier. What if money did not require permission? What if money could not be created arbitrarily? What if trust could be replaced by rules? These questions were radical. Not revolutionary, but philosophical. The shift no one noticed at first. Bitcoin did not promise efficiency. It promised predictability. It did not promise stability. It promised transparency. It did not promise equality. It promised neutrality. These are monetary values, not technological features. And this is why Bitcoin must be understood as a response to crisis of control. Not as speculation. Not as rebellion. Not as a get-rich-quick scheme. But as a monetary thought experiment turned into code. A question written in software. What if money didn't need to be controlled by anyone? Transition to Part 4. In the next episode, we will explore that experiment itself. What Bitcoin actually is. What it solves. What it cannot solve. And why it challenges the oldest assumption in human society. That money must always come from authority. If this episode made you feel something, maybe discomfort, maybe curiosity, maybe a little unease about who really holds the power in our financial system, then we're doing what we set out to do. Most people never ask these questions. They assume the system works the way it's supposed to. They assume fairness is built in. They assume someone is watching. History tells us something different. Here's what I need from you. First, hit that like button. It tells the platforms that deep thinking still has an audience. That questions matter more than certainty. Second, subscribe if you haven't already. Episode 04 is where we finally get into Bitcoin, what it actually is, why it exists, and whether it can deliver on its promise. This is the episode people have been waiting for. You don't want to miss it. And third, and this is the one I genuinely value most, leave a comment. Tell me, did 2008 change how you think about money? Did you feel the asymmetry? And if Bitcoin is a response to broken trust, do you think it works? I read every single one. I want to know what you're thinking, what you're questioning, what you want me to go deeper on. This isn't a lecture, it's a conversation, and your voice is part of it. So like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you in episode 04. Until then, keep questioning the things everyone else takes for granted.